Three, two, one.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this weekly webinar from Universal Peace Federation, or UPF. This particular webinar is sponsored by the International Association for Peace and Economic Development. It's one of the associations of the Universal Peace Federation that was founded by Dr. Sun Myung Moon and Hak Jahan Moon. My name's Roger Weatherall, and I'll be the moderator for today's topic. So today's topic, we're looking at fertility and policies that can affect the current fertility crisis that we see in the world. So I'm just going to read the little introduction that was sent out because I pulled this right from an article that our presenter today wrote, and I think it summarizes what we want to talk about. So it says, one of the cruelest aspects of modern life is that while the life cycle has slowed dramatically, meaning we finish education later, we move out of the parental home later, children start making real money later, and then they marry later, but the fertility window, our biological clocks, haven't budged at all. Everything is still the same as it used to be. So modern birth control has allowed people to take control of fertility and delay having children much longer than ever before. And there are plenty of things that people can do with the extra years of youth and their young adulthood. They can engage in more education, career building, travel, and many other activities. But that delay is actually taking a terrible toll. Fertility rates have plunged far below replacement in nearly every developed country, and in most countries, people are falling far short of their desired fertility. So even though they're delaying it, they want to have children, but ultimately they're not able to have those children. So the question today is it possible to promote policies that enable young people to have both the financial stability and the children that they want? Or are those two goals mutually exclusive? So Daniel Hess has been one of the most outspoken advocates for prenatal policies.
Yeah, pronatal policies, yes.
Pronatal policies. Thank you, Daniel. So Daniel is a father of 6 children, so he practices what he preaches. He's a graduate of Cornell University Engineering, and he's worked in intellectual property for many years, focused on demography so he became focused on demography after he realized that many of the most innovative countries, such as Japan and Korea, actually have extremely low and falling birth rates that threaten the future of their social structure and also their technological innovation and progress. He writes on X, on the very popular account @morebirths, which you can look up later, and he has over 40,000 followers. So, Daniel, welcome to our program today, and please give us your presentation. And if anybody has questions throughout, please put them in the chat or save them until the end, and we'll have plenty of time for discussion. So, over to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and yes, so fertility and financial success, what policies can promote both? So what we're looking at right now, as you can see, this is a map of fertility around the world, and areas in red are below replacement. Replacement is regarded as 2.1 births per woman, as you may have been familiar with, and so if a country falls below 2.1 births per woman, according to a measure called the total fertility rate, that country has fallen below replacement. That means it's having fewer children than the amount needed to replace each generation. And as we can see on this map, almost the entire planet now is below replacement. It's, all of North America, almost all of South America, every single country in Europe, most of uh, Asia, including all of East Asia, Australia, just a few parts of the world are even replacing themselves. So this is, if you can think about the future, this is not good at all. And one of the most frustrating aspects of this is that economic development is a wonderful thing. We would all agree about that. Yet in virtually every country, as education and development occurs, as the country progresses, the birth rate relentlessly falls, and it doesn't simply fall to replacement, but it falls well below replacement. Most advanced countries now are far below replacement. So here's a picture of Korea. No, people, one of the most difficult and challenging things about this crisis is that it happens on a delay. If South Korea is often talked about, South Korea is merely the most extreme example of many examples of falling birth rates that are far too low to replace the population. But if you look at a population pyramid of South Korea, that means the number of people at each age group. The workforce in South Korea is at an all-time high. So if you look just at the economy, it looks like things are going gangbusters, and we all enjoy a million Korean products, including probably the cell phones in our pockets. So the workforce in South Korea is at an all-time high, but there is only 1/4 as many 1-year-olds as there are 50-year-olds. So what that means is that the generations coming are just a tiny fraction of what the most of what the peak working age population is. So that's a country that is that looks fine on the surface, but faces very steep decline in the future. And part of the problem is that a lot of this decline is already baked in. If South Korea, turned everything around tomorrow and jumped back up to replacement, it would still all these there's this giant hole in the population pyramid that will remain. Everybody who's going to be 21 in 20 years has already been born. And South Korea is a very notable example because South Korea is the most innovative and high-tech country as measured by patent applications per capita. It is the most innovative country in the entire world. So,
Could I just ask on this
sure.
as well? I see that you've got this dark blue and the dark red, and that indicates this surplus, right? So you have more men than you have women who are younger, and then when you go older, you have more older women, right? Than you
Yeah,
have
so
men.
the older women is that's quite natural in every single country in the world. Women uh, uh, tend to live longer. They by some years in almost every country. Um, but here, what we see, between about 20 and about 35, this gap here, where there's uh, relatively more uh, men than women, that is a function of sex selective abortion. So in Korea, in China, in several other East Asian countries, on top of falling birth rates, you have this gender imbalance where in a culture that favored bo boys over girls, many uh, many female fetuses were aborted 20, 30 years ago, and so you have this gap in the population pyramid, which aggravates things and makes things significantly worse. Um, and
That means that there are a lot of men who will not be able to find spouses anyway, right? Even at that age, 20 to
right.
30
So
of age.
that means that that the decline in births is going to be more severe because there's a shortage of women of childbearing age presently as a result. So there is this notion that if you have demographic decline, it's fine. Everybody will be rich. There'll be fewer people, but they will all be prosperous. That's not what we see in the world. In places that are depopulating, you see abandoned buildings. You see real estate crashing, markets crashing, shops closing. It's not this utopia that people paint. It's quite the opposite. All the places in the world that are in decline in terms of population are looking like, some version of this. Abandoned buildings, general sadness, and it's not what we envision. So why is this happening? And as you mentioned, there's this terrible mismatch of age and fertility. This is what a fertility curve really looks like, and this was the result of a paper that was published about 2 years ago that really was a shock paper, because most people think that the ability to get pregnant, is high until maybe about 35, 37, and then it starts to taper off. That's not true at all. It turns out that the ability of women to get pregnant peaks at the age of 20 and is high mainly in the 20s. It's already dropped quite a bit by 30. By 35, it's only 1/3 of its peak, and by age 40, a women's fertility window is almost closed. And this curve sort of applies to men as well, because most young men are with a young woman their age in the overwhelming majority of cases. So this is kind of although this is a female fecundability curve, this applies to men and women alike. So what are we doing in rich countries in our 20s and 30s? We're going to college, we're getting established, starting a career, figuring things out, finding ourselves. But this is a very narrow window that people have, and it's a very, very serious mismatch. And here, if we look at in rich countries, here what we're looking at here is a curve where on the x-axis is the age at marriage, on the y-axis is the fertility rate. So you can see that the age at which people marry in a country has a very powerful impact on the birth rate of that country. So in every country where the average marriage age is 29 or older, fertility is below replacement without any exceptions. And that's, in most developed countries, marriage age is getting to be into the 30s, but we remember what that curve looked like. Fertility is already much, much lower by then. So when people delay, ultimately they end up not having the children that they hope to have. And this was a study by an economist at Harvard. He looked at here on the x-axis you have different measures of progress. So you have GDP per capita, Human Development Index, the average years of schooling, and so the age of marriage for women in every case. And on the y-axis, what you have is something called fertility realizability. So that's a measure of how many children you have in relation to how many children you had hoped to have. So if fertility realizability is above 1, you end up people had more children than they hoped to have. If fertility realizability is below 1, that means people ended up having fewer children than they hoped to have. And what we see is that as countries progress in terms of education, in terms of human development, you end up with this terrible situation where people are not having the children that they wanted to have. People are ending up far below not just replacement. It's not simply that people don't want children anymore. That's not the case. People still want children. They still want families, um, but in many countries they're having, only half, in some cases, of the half of the family, half of the children that they want to have in these countries. South Korea, Japan, the United States, all of these countries, uh, and most other developed countries, people are having far fewer children than they want to have. And the reason is that all these things that you having children is something that you simply cannot delay indefinitely. So this is a catastrophe for innovation and economic progress in particular. Nearly every high innovation country uh, has low fertility now. So innovation is the engine of economic growth. It's the engine of economic progress. So, and this is kind of to be expected because as we saw, when you have a long education, um, you're when you have a long time establishing your career, these are the things that are associated with advanced countries. Uh, well, you end up delaying, and a very large section of the population is missing their fertility window, or at least catching only the tail end of it. Because remember, if you get married at 32 or 35, you're only grabbing the very tail end of your fertility window. If you marry at 40, you've lost it completely.
So, Daniel, how much do you think this has been caused by education? So, I think Western countries have done a great job of educating people in their birth control methodologies, right? To teach them how to not have children. But we haven't done a great job of teaching people how to have children and when to have children, right? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. All of, sex ed in high schools and uh, most of how we talk about fertility, at least in terms of how you're talking to young people, is something, we say safe sex, which what is meant by that is contracepted sex, that that you're so young people are taught entirely how to avoid having children, uh, which is that advice you know is very outdated in the sense that it is much more likely in 2025 for people to reach the end of their childbearing years not having had the children that they wanted to have than to have unwanted pregnancies. So unplanned childlessness is actually much more common than unintended pregnancy. The education system is really fighting the wrong problem. Um, and meanwhile, ambitious young people are consumed by school throughout their 20s. We emphasize education so hard, so much that we're literally dooming our civilization to calamity, because if a population isn't replacing itself, there will be no innovators, or very few innovators. The each generation will not be able to pay the debts of the generation before. You'll have this economic downward spiral, and we're seeing that happen already in a lot of countries. The United States is seeing it. Many European countries are seeing it even more severely. It's a global problem, and uh, here is an example of the solution. This is my friend, economist and author Catherine Pakalik. She's an outspoken pronatalism advocate. She raised 14 children, and she also is she has a PhD from Harvard and is a tenured economics professor. So she did it all. But we can see, can you see that how she did it? Uh, Clearly, she had her children uh, very early and delayed her education. She still uh, achieved her education in the end. She's not only a tenured economics professor, but she's a world-renowned intellectual and thinker who has spoken to audiences globally. So she achieved it all, but she had to have the family early, long before she graduated. As you can see she she has 6 kids. She graduated, so there is a path. There is a path, but and so we can look what caused the baby boom. A lot of it was young marriage. That's the biggest factor in the baby boom. Was it was a time when the marriage age was younger than it had been at any time in history, and that was enough to produce a large baby boom. And that was also a time of economic progress and growth, innovation. We we landed on the moon. America had the fastest economic growth of any country in the world, and we had high birth rates at the same time. And the simple reality, the thing that was at the center of it was that people were marrying young people. The average age of marriage for women was 21 years old. I mean, that that boggles the mind today, right? Um,
Yeah, I have a question about that. So I always thought that it had always been an upward slope, right? That back in like the 1800s, people actually married younger, like in their 16 and 17-year-old. But this says that, you
no,
know,
no, that is not the case, actually.
so so what was it that caused that dip, do you think?
That's a more difficult question, but you did have a very, I wasn't alive at that time, but there was a special cultural moment, I think. Um, I think there was there was the values that America had at that time, and this was, around the world, was a very pro-family culture. You were on the one hand, love was in the air, and there was all sorts of pop music that was celebrating love. On the other hand, there was an expectation that if you wanted to experience love, you had to be married. And I think the confluence of those two elements, on the one hand, uh, you're celebrating love, but on the other hand, you have this requirement that people have to get married at the time. That's what people did. People wanted to, experience the joy of love, as all the pop culture was celebrating, but you still had the cultural understanding that if you wanted that, you had to get married. And
Hmm,
so that's my view of why people were really marrying as young as they did at that time. Um,
interesting.
there may be economic factors as well. There was you know a strong abundance of opportunity for young men, um, as well. So um, another factor is, there's this tug of war between the young and the old, financially. That's not. I mean, the numbers are staggering. I'm going to share a little bit. So, uh, empty nesters own 28% of large homes. That's homes of 3 bedrooms or more. Now, that's not really large homes, but it's just a home that's appropriate for a family, a single family home or something, as opposed to apartments. Empty nesters own 28% of them. Millennials with children only own 14%. So you have this terrible economic mismatch where uh, you have the older generation has an abundance of these large empty houses, that, and remember, millennials, the oldest millennials already are about 45 years old. So the oldest millennials have already aged out of having children. So and still, you know, the home ownership rate in that group is is much lower than the generation that came before it, even though the baby boomers and generation Gen X are well beyond the time of having children, and the baby boomers are already generally speaking, empty nesters. Here we see a look at the wealth breakdown in the United States. Over, there people younger than 35 have very, very little wealth. Meanwhile, the greatest share of wealth is people 55 to 64 and 65 and up. So you have this this big mismatch in society, and the way it works is people when they're 85, they pass on their fortune to their children who are 55 or so. Do we see a problem here? That's not going to help with birth rates at all. You have this when all of the wealth and resource in society are held, by the ones who have passed beyond their fertility window. That's a big problem.
So maybe they should be passing on their inheritance to their grandchildren instead. Is that what you're thinking, Daniel?
Yeah, or there's another phrase, give with a warm hand. Give with a warm hand means give while you're still alive. Give with a cold hand means you passed on at the age of 85 or 90 or 95 to your 55 or 60 or 65-year-old. I mean, can you imagine? Plenty of people, they finally get their inheritance when they're already a senior citizen. Can you imagine that? How is that going to help family formation at all? The senior citizens, and we saw that, I think, with King Charles in England. He finally got the crown when he was already an advanced senior citizen.
Right.
So which that's how royalty works. But certainly when it comes to family formation, it is a big problem if young people, cannot get a house that's appropriate to raise children until they're 50 or 55. That is simply a major problem in society. And we can look as well at entitlements. So that is, transfers in terms of tax and spend. So remember, we saw that most wealth is in the hands of the old. But if we look at spending, overwhelmingly, it is, people above the age of 65 who are receiving the overwhelming share of tax dollars, and the ones that are paying in are people, 18 to 55 or so. And we see the big problem here because as we recall, it is the older generation that has most wealth in the country. So you have a situation of the young and poor overwhelmingly subsidizing the old and rich, while the young and poor are the ones that are not able to afford homes. So this is a big source of the crisis as well. And it makes you wince to look at this chart, I know, but when we recall the wealth imbalance, but that's how it is in virtually every developed country in the world. Another different policy point is housing. We talked about family-friendly housing. There is this overwhelming trend right now to build apartments in high-rise towers. That the YIMBY trend, the urban thing is the fashionable thing. Suburbs are unfashionable. We call it urban sprawl, and we like to sniff our noses at it. But actually, this is Texas, and this is perfect. This is ideal for families. This is wonderful for children, and the suburbs is actually an incredible ideal for families because families can be connected with the economic hub of major cities, and at the same time there's space and room to raise families, and we see that the fertility rate in suburbs like this is close to replacement. Meanwhile, this is Seoul, South Korea, and the fertility rate in Seoul is 0.5 births per woman. So we remember replacement is 2.1 births per woman. So in Seoul, people are only having 1/4 of the number of children needed to replace themselves. So that means every generation in Seoul would be 1/4 the size of the one before it, and 2 generations forward, you're talking about a generation size that is 1/16 as large. So this is rapid national collapse, and this is devastating for the whole global economy because, as we saw, and China is like this as well. China housing looks exactly like this, and so and moreover, East Asia, China, Korea, many other East Asian countries are actually the hub of global manufacturing, which is central to the whole global economy. So much of what's used and consumed all over the world is produced in these East Asian countries. So when if we think about how great YIMBY is, we want to build up the cities. We don't want to build suburbs because suburbs are bad. We need to think twice about that because that is proving catastrophic in East Asia. And so here, let's review some of these major policy solutions. We want to really educate young people. I would so that they know when they're 20 years old, when they're 18 years old, they know that their fertility is already slipping away, and they need to focus on this as much or more than they focus on career. Career has a very long window, 50 years, that you can focus on that. The fertility window is very short. Meanwhile, speeding up education is a path. And then on the economic side, we need to shift spending. There's a huge amount of spending on senior citizens, which is really choking out the younger generation. Meanwhile, there's all sorts of additional benefits. Like for example, senior citizens may not have to pay much in property taxes, which is really absurd when you remember that senior citizens are the ones that have most of the wealth in this country. Encourage intergenerational generosity. And building the right kind of housing, suburbs, not high rises. And lastly, we really need to talk about the problem and build an awareness that we do face a crisis. It is possible to look into the abyss and have a turnaround. Actually, Israel is an example. Israel is the one country on earth that has both first world economic progress and first world economic success and high birth rates. Israel is the only country in the world that achieves both. And how does it achieve it? Primarily by being very intentional about it. In Israel, having children is a national cause. Everybody's aware of the very tragic 20th century history, the Holocaust, and there is an urgency in Israel to have children. That awareness is something that a lot of countries could benefit from. So here we are. This is the end of this presentation. My family story is already complete. My wife and I, our fertility window is basically closed now. We are, it kind of drives home. You may think I'm a young guy, but I'm already in the group of the old. I've already passed family formation. We're very fortunate and lucky that we focused on that when we were in our 20s and early 30s. But thank you so much. That's this presentation. Let's open the floor for questions.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. And there's a lot of comments coming in. And I just wanted to say this, we're going to make this an open discussion too. So if people would like to, come off mute and actually make a comment rather than just ask a question, we'll, invite you to do that. We just ask that you raise your hand by clicking on the button at the bottom in the reactions section. And you can just raise your hand and then I'll call on you when we're ready. Or you can put it in the chat and then I can ask a question. But I'd also like to invite Alan Jessen to join us on the screen here. And I know Alan's got a couple of questions. He's my collaborator in the IAED sphere. So, Alan, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. Excellent, excellent. And a lot of it relates to economics, of course. I've been reading a book by the Heritage Foundation on this issue. They have a whole section on that. And they have a term for this. They call it a crisis of family formation. I'm wondering if that's a good phrase. Natalism, I'm not sure people really have a resonate with what that means, birth rates and all, but family formation kind of makes a big picture to me. And they also they're talking like you are for some radical action, renewed thinking. You'd have he called it a mission of national renewal. So who can start that mission of national renewal? Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. What came to my mind in your presentation is it primarily a cultural change or economic barriers?
It's some of both. I mean, the tendency of an advanced society, is toward more education, and you need more education to be economically fruitful in our society. So things have changed in certain aspects of the world that relate to technology and progress. But what that means is that you need a cultural shift toward much greater pronatal focus. Whereas in the past, when educations were short and people married young, this wasn't a problem. And there was a lot less. There were some birth control methods, but they were very primitive, and so children naturally came. But we are in a structure now where the natural tendency, if we do nothing, is to have birth rates that are far, far below replacement, and that is, in the long run, producing civilizational decline in many, many countries. So you need, I would say you have to focus on pronatalism and pro-family actually more than ever before, because the headwinds are more than ever before. The natural tendency is to delay, and the body hasn't changed at all in terms of the biological clock is the same as ever.
Yeah, I think many people don't understand that even with IVF treatments and everything, they're still dependent on your biological clock, right? There's a certain amount of the woman's body has to be ready to be able to receive an IVF, an implantation
Yeah, and
or something
to
like
go
that.
into the technical details on that, it really has to do with the age of the egg more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so IVF is, I think it's a wonderful, technology. I mean, admittedly, certain religious conservatives have issues with it, but I really think that if we want to really solve this problem, we need a big tent, which means you need the tech side of the pronatalists, you need the religious traditional families, and you even need to have an open heart for people who get to family in other ways, your single parents and so forth. Even if you have a certain family ideal, which we want, if we want to really solve this, your first guiding principle has to be, appreciating families and appreciating children, in all their forms.
Sure. We have a couple of people with their hands up, so I'm going to go to Wayne. If you would like to make your comment, Wayne,
Oh,
unmute
I
you.
would.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation, Daniel. A lot of food for thought. We're well aware of Mao's one-child policy that ran from 1975 to 2015. Yet they're the most populous nation on earth. They have no shortage of men in the military. They had rapid industrialization and the people to bring that about. And so I'm wondering, what is really the reality? Is this a dire problem for China? Is it going to explode in 2075? What are your thoughts about this?
I mean, I honestly think that the problem is already hitting very hard right now, and it takes unusual forms that we're not really familiar with. If you follow the markets, you'll see that gold has quadrupled in the last decade or so. I don't know who follows gold, but that is a real predictor, that a lot of smart people are expecting severe crisis. And it's my belief that the reason, gold has been skyrocketing, is not a good thing when the price of gold is high. That's an indicator of major crisis ahead. And I think that I think that the demographic crisis is the reason. But again, I was talking about South Korea. You have this. It's very difficult to really make sense of it because in the moment things look great because these missing children, these children that have not been born, that you have this gap in the population pyramid. But if it's children, the economy looks great, and so the problem exists on a lag. So we're going to have a very severe crisis, and it's developing already. But there's this lag, and once you're in it, it's much too late. You can't go back and have the children that were never born.
So I know that there are various incentive programs that are being proposed. So I'll just go over a few that I found recently. So one is there's a South Korean billionaire, the president of a company called Buyong Group, who is offering a $75,000 bonus. It's 100 million won, right? Korean won, to any employee that has a baby, even if to the men whose wives have babies. So $75,000 they're trying to do. I think this would be a good idea. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that is that is incredibly important. But I also think even more than the cash itself, I think is the symbolism and the message behind it, which is that the children are the thing that we need more than anything else. And as I said, the one country on earth, there's only one country on earth that achieves, high GDP per capita, high economic strength, and high birth rates, and that's Israel. That's the only country on earth that does
Right.
that. And the best answer, and I've tried. I hope to go to Israel sometime soon. It's probably a little safer now, in that part of the world. Not knock on wood. But the principle that they have above all else is valuing children as a cause of national importance. It's
Yeah.
so.
So Alan, you wanted to make a
Roger,
comment?
yeah, could I just share my example on that same thing? That I just saw this article about Poland. So the Polish have just signed a law effective October 16th that completely eliminates personal income tax for all parents raising at least two children. It's called a fiscal shield, he says. And the president, when he signed it, he said, the family is the heart of a nation and must also be the center of the economy. And they're following some successful policies that Hungary adopted a few years ago, which has significantly raised the birth rate over there. So that would put some cash in people's pockets when they're young if they don't have to pay income tax.
Yes, and of course, there's also what President Trump is doing with, lowering the costs for IVF treatments. He just came out with this last week. I thought that was very timely. reducing the cost of drugs for IVF treatments for people. And he's also, I saw a comment in the chat here from somebody from Matt Goldberg saying that there's a proposal to offer a $5,000 baby bonus to every American mother after she gives birth. Have you heard about these ones, Daniel, too?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed. These are great things. I mean, uh, I do think we have to look uh, even on a larger scale. On the one hand, these incentives are wonderful. On the other hand, we have to look, as I said, at the balance between uh, young and old. If you are running very high deficits as we are, then you get very high inflation, and which is what we've had recently, um, and and so that is a tremendous problem in terms of in terms of making things harder for young families. So you kind of, on the one hand, it's great to incentivize young families, but at the other hand, you have to kind of cut back on your spending elsewhere, especially you know s- uh, if you're spending so much on senior citizens that you may actually, on net, you may be spending much more on seniors than you are on young families. So
Yeah, yeah.
so
We got to
you have to
balance that out more. So,
shift to a younger age.
so Matt, I see you put up your hand. I'm going to call on you. Did you want to continue the comment, and then I'll come back to Tyler and Karina, who've also got their hands up. So can't
You're
hear
muted.
you for some reason, Matt. I don't know what's going on.
Now, is that better?
That's better. Yep, thanks.
Okay, good. There are a lot of factors to consider, which could be drivers for people not to want to have children. And I think it's important to look at those threats. One of them is rising medical expenses, healthcare expenses. It's not getting lower. We have a daughter who works in the medical field and specifically targets her work in pediatrics to serving underserved populations. And she's alarmed at the high price of medical care, and some of the policies that we see coming on the conservative side are actually hurting people that have low income. So that should
Yeah,
change.
you make an excellent point. There is no political side that has a monopoly
Mhm.
on family issues. Actually,
Yeah.
in the cultural sphere, in terms of marriage, religiosity, and values, conservatives do have a strength, and that is one reason why conservatives in the United States do tend to have much higher fertility. But again, they don't have and on the other side, as you say, conservatives have a really hard time spending on families. That it's very hard for them. It goes against the grain, and that is something that the liberal side does a better job of. So there, it's very hard. We all get locked in our political biases. It's very hard to escape that. But neither side you know has a monopoly on good ideas here, and both sides have major blind spots. The right in particular is really,
Hmm.
it really has a hard time, opening up in terms of social policy to help families. That on the left, there's real cultural problems, but both sides are deficient, and both sides need the other. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. You have anything else to add, Matt?
Just rising food prices, things like that. And I would encourage Daniel, it's a beautiful presentation, to try to make materials available that could be used to change policy.
Yeah.
Um, Government policy changes over the long run, and no party stays in power forever. Today's winners are going to be tomorrow's losers.
Yeah,
If
no,
you
that's
live
right.
long
That's
enough, you'll
right.
see that.
Yeah, Matt,
Family-based policy.
Daniel has some really good articles on his Twitter feed on X. Sorry, X now. Okay.
Yeah, those could be
Um,
made available widely. I think that's a great
yeah.
thing, Daniel.
Yeah, it is public, but okay. So if you go, my handle on X is called More Births, and
We'll put it in the chat in a minute. Yeah.
if you can just follow, and if you click on the articles tab, that's where I've written some more long form stuff. I'm very eager to hear. I see Tyler Hendricks has his hand up. I'd be so delighted to hear that.
Yes, Tyler, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I've thought and advocated that, well, we do case studies. Someone in the chat brought up the Latter-day Saints, and I was thinking particularly of our movement. I think I've recommended, we haven't done it, but I've recommended that we do a study in South Korea of the fertility rate of our blessed families. And I would expect, but we should find out, that it would be above replacement. And then you could do the same thing where Latter-day Saints or Jews in Israel. What's going on that makes these religious, what are the religious impetus or motivations or cultural environment in which, statistically speaking, people, we've solved this problem.
Yes,
And,
yes, that's a wonderful, that's a wonderful launching off point for, to talk about, yeah, religious fertility is, it, you know, it, for all those people that thought we don't need religion, we're enlightened, we've moved past that. It turns out that that's not true. Countries that have become secular and have very low religiosity have incredibly low fertility rates, and you can look within, countries that have higher rates of religiosity have much higher fertility. Then you can look all the way down to the individual level. People who are religious have much higher fertility, and it scales all the way up. Somebody who never goes to church has the lowest fertility. Somebody who goes to church once a year has a little bit higher. Somebody who goes once a month has higher still. Somebody who goes every week, they're well above replacement. And then I have some family friends. She goes to mass every single day, and they have 11 children. So
Oh my gosh.
the pronatal power of religion is incredible, and it's continuous. And you're asking what is it about religion? There's actually quite a lot of things. I mean, one is it's forward thinking. There's a vision. There's optimism. That's incredibly important. There is, the direct ask. People are asked, please, if you would please have a lot of children. That's in the Bible, and religious leaders can also,
Right.
there's a Catholic parish that where I sometimes go for Christian holidays. I go to a mass there from time to time, and this particular Catholic parish is full of large families, and it's very interesting. The head priest, when he does mass, when he prays every single time that the congregation, that the church, the parish, can be blessed with a lot of babies.
That's a good idea. We should
Everybody,
take up that practice.
So merely talking about it has an enormous impact, actually. So there's that. There's also the fact that babies are contagious. In other words, somebody has babies, and all the young women are young mother has babies, and all the young women in her circle are ready to, they get the itch.
So there's kind of a cultural change that we need to initiate as well. But I wanted to go to
which I will just want to just add one more thing, which is that religion is not automatically pronatal. It doesn't, what religious leaders communicate is incredibly important, and that is relevant as well. Even in our own movement is that in the time when Reverend Moon was talking very clearly, encouraging people to have a lot of children, and so they did. And that, if you could chart the birth rate in our movement, it was the times that that Father was saying that the birth rates were the highest. And that's a very simple, the simplest answer of all to grow the movement is just to start saying it.
Thank you. Good point, Daniel. Karina, could you make your comment?
Thank you. And thank you, Daniel. I've heard you before in a prayer group. I am currently living in a state called New Mexico, mostly Catholic background. So fortunately, we have a lot of children in the Catholic churches, as you were mentioning. But on the other hand, we have a governor and legislature that is promoting abortion up to birth, and all the transgender procedures for the children. So there is also a certain division in the Catholic community. Even, of course, we have other groups here. I'm originally from Finland, that is a border country facing the Russian threat since centuries. Also, you mentioned Poland, Hungary. They have all family-friendly policies. It may be difficult to turn the tide, but when a nation is under threat of invasion, like Israel constantly, I would say, the last 70 years, there's also certain kind of consciousness that national, what did you call that? National threat or
National renewal.
national renewal that if we want to survive, we have to have the next generation. My nieces and my nephews, for the most part, have at least 2 children. Even Finland, to a great extent, is a secular country. So there are
I can speak to some of the issues that you raised. So
yes, and there's
thank you.
multiple factors with that.
I will say, actually,
Yes.
people don't realize it, but fertility in Poland is actually incredibly low. It's already down to around 1.0 births per woman. So you have this crisis, and it's similar to the crisis in South Korea, actually, I think, in a lot of ways. There's this pursuit of economic, and here we're getting back to the point of the title of the presentation. You have this pursuit of economic endeavor and economic success above everything else. And so it is, the 2 of the countries that have grown economically the fastest in the entire world are, in the East, South Korea. In Europe, it's Poland, and these are the 2 countries that have the fastest fertility collapse. So there is it's actually a tension in some sense. Economics and family formation are in conflict, at least in the short term, and you have to kind of one can't dominate the other. I mean, in some very poor countries, you have people are not getting education, but in most rich countries, people are overwhelmingly focusing on education, work, and career progress. To the total exclusion of family formation, and that's the terrible crisis that a lot of these countries face. So you need this cultural force. You need a cultural force that is strong enough to fight the overwhelming pull of money. And in the end, if you don't have family, if you don't have children, then all the economic success and all the economic progress that will be lost in the end if you don't have children.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know how Israel has accomplished that. But I know they are under threat. They have been all the time, but they have also the religious factor in there. And after World War II, that was where your stats showed that.
Well, like I was saying,
yes,
right? Yeah, what I was saying, it was Israel is very explicitly pronatal, but it very directly. So David Ben-Gurion is considered the founder of Israel. He had a birth rate obsession. He told people, please, everybody, have a lot of children. There was no. He didn't get into the weeds about housing policy or this or that. He just said it outright. It's important to have a lot of children, and that seems kind of too simple or too reductive. But actually, that's incredibly important. And as I mentioned, the time in our movement when our birth rate was the highest was when people were hearing that over and over again.
Yes, we need to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to Jim Edgley because we've only got a few minutes left. Thank you, Karina. Jim.
Hey, Dan. Hi, Dan. That was such a professional and well-researched presentation. Thank you so much. I just want to share 2 things on the table that I hear in my family. One is in my siblings' families when they were growing up, and when these kids they're now passing through that window. But there was this big conversation. If you care about the environment, the most important thing you can possibly do is not to have any children. And that was the mindset for a whole generation of people who thought they were being responsible for taking care of the environment, was this sense that you're hurting the environment if you have a family. And I was that was an issue, pressure against me and my family versus my siblings and their children, how we had a big family and we were kind of felt ashamed for a while.
Yeah.
And then
yes. That is Are you from New England?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know, I knew you're from New England actually, but no, but it is there is that actually Jim Boothby has told me the same thing also from New England that there was this that yeah that was a big discussion and that
Yeah.
was which is an important part of this discussion is that fertility rates didn't just collapse accidentally. There were a lot of ideologues
Yes.
who were really
Science,
pushing
yeah.
that and honestly it's understandable if you live in 1960 or 1965 and you see everything seeming to follow an exponential curve. I understand what people may have been thinking back then, but that is not the world that we live in now. We live in a world of uh, birth rates far below replacement in many countries, but also in terms of the environment. um, you actually need a lot of very smart innovators to solve all the environmental problems, actually. So
Yeah.
we can go to an all electric system, all powered by solar power. We can do all of those things and take our energy footprint very low if we have a young and innovative population. If you have an old population, then you're kind of stuck with whatever you have because you don't have
Yeah.
the economic youth and vitality and level of innovation necessary to transform and solve
Yeah.
all the environmental problems.
The other thing I hear in my own kids is when we talk about why they wouldn't have more children, the one thing comes up, is predominant factor consideration for them is the very high cost of childcare. That is blocking my children from having more for me having more grandchildren.
Despite the fact that you offered to take care of them, James?
We do what we can, but they need something 5 days a week.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's a big issue for them. Yeah.
I mean, there is as I say, there is a terrible, and I'm going to say it's a conflict, pulling on, the career pool and the family pool they're in conflict. They pull in opposite directions. There isn't an easy balance. I showed the picture of my good friend Catherine Pakalik. Anyway, I will say a word about her. She lives in maybe 15 miles from my house. She's got, as I say, she raised 14 children. Her husband's first wife passed away, so she was a young grad student. She inherited 6 children, and then when her husband's first wife passed away tragically of premature cancer, she inherited 6 children and then had 8 of her own while going through grad school. What she had to do was she had to push aside grad school. She had to push aside her own career aspirations
Yeah.
because she had this narrow window. She took advantage of it, and now has she is now still a world-renowned
Hmm.
intellectual and author and thinker and speaker. I mean, she's achieved at the highest level, just not at the same time. So there is, if the family is a high enough priority, people can, I think there's a need to step back from work a little bit and focus, for a season on family.
Great. So I think we're at the end of our time here. I'd just like to wrap up a bit. There were some very good comments in the chat. You know, Melissa was making some good comments there also about, you know, the social revaluing of women, especially them taking time to bear and raise children for the benefit of society needs to be emphasized more. Um, and I think there's a lot of cultural things that can be done. But um, Daniel, do you want to just sum up with a few words what you think? And then Alan, if you want to say a few words after that, and then we'll wrap up here. Daniel, what are the key things that we need to focus on? Give me 3 points.
Yeah, I think the overarching thing is to really recognize the problem and really recognize the severe age constraints. The fact that really in the United States, if you survey people how many children would they like to have, you get a number 2.7 children per family. 2.7 births per woman is what people say they want in surveys over and over and over, yet the fertility rate is 1.5 to 1.6, more than a child less. And every developed country is like this. People are having far, far, far fewer children than they want to have. Because they're just delaying too long. And
so education is the first point. What's the second one?
So yes, the second one is moving society toward favoring the young over the old, because as I said, that's a big financial shift. The third point is housing, focused on the family suitable housing, the suburbs, the suburban sprawl, the things that the urbanists would kind of scoff and sneer, wrinkle their nose at, is actually really wonderful for raising families. So those are the three things that I focus on here.
Good three policy areas that we can focus on. Alan, your thoughts?
I'm for all of the above, and a major focus, a national renewal kind of campaign to get everybody's thinking in that way. Back to the example of Hungary, they spend 6% of their GDP on family-friendly policies to encourage marriage and family formation. And in terms of housing and daycare, it's a supply-side question. You need to reduce regulation and allow more development, and speed up the development and take away some of the regulation that slows things down. Allow more in-house daycare.
Yeah, deregulate daycare is a wonderful, very easy policy. Just let people, you don't need to require a long list of things to do that. So there's a lot, really a lot there. And as I would, in terms of deregulate building, I would say specifically the way to deregulate is to deregulate outward. In other words, open up more land, but so you can get the suburbs. That's the thing that people miss is, if you just let people build vertical apartment towers everywhere, that's not going to solve your birth rate problem. What you really need to do is allow family suitable housing, which is generally an expansion outward into to new developable
Well, when
land.
all us old people start dying, then there'll be a lot of houses available. Okay, so
passed on to the 55-year-old and 60-year-old children at that time. So that's why again we have to emphasize giving with a warm hand early enough to really help young families before it's too late to help families.
All right. Thanks very much, Daniel, for all of your insights. And I know you've got a lot more to say and a lot more ideas and things. So everybody, please follow Daniel on @morebirths in X. If you just search for that, one word, right, @morebirths, you can find him there. And let's do our best to educate people about what's going on, right?
Right, and one last final
okay,
point.
one more.
Final point, because I know a lot of people are, shall we say, of a certain age. I love everyone here, but at that point, definitely, generosity, both in terms of childcare and literal financial support to the young families within your own tribe, within your own personal clan of children and grandchildren, is an outstanding way to, help encourage your growing tribe. So that's a really wonderful thing. So thank you so much for.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very, very much to all of our audience and to Alan for your comments and assistance here.
Thank you.
See you again soon.
I'll give you a warm hand.
All right. Bye, everyone.